The job title CRO doesn't exist. We are enablers, helping product teams, marketing teams, servant teams to make good decisions based on data.
What is going on, certified homies? Welcome to another episode of From A to B. You have Shiva, and I'm joined by Ton the Don Wesseling. Okay, first of all, shout out to me for nailing your name.
Awesome,
right?
All the way. Especially Ton the Don, which is like that's.
Yes, that's your nickname.
Now. Yes, it is officially now. Yes, thank you.
It is officially now. You have to update your LinkedIn. I require every guest to go in and update their LinkedIn. Your name is now Ton the Don. And it was so apt to call you the Don because, man, you are just such a pervasive voice in the experimentation community. You've keynoted, you've been a founder of multiple of a CRO agency, if not multiple. You have your fingers on so many things in the CRO agency or in the CRO space. Anyone listening to this, if you don't know who Ton the Don is, like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Also, if you're a product owner or an engineer or something, welcome. Ton the Don is a fucking prominent, awesome voice in the CRO space. Before we hopped on, I wanted to quickly get your intro. Like, how do I intro you? Like, I want to call you a keynote speaker. I want to call out the thing that you said was, I don't know, what's special about me? And I was like, this is such a perfect encompass of the person and the human that you are, that you're so humble. And you're like, I don't know what's special about me. I guess I'm like a keynote speaker. I founded a couple agencies. I've just been in this shit for like 20 years. So anyway, you're an awesome human being. Ton, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Shiva. I just love conversion optimization. And that's what keeps me driving and getting up in the morning and to be able to work in this field is such fun. There are so many fun people, so many fun projects to do. So I'm just a happy man. So
many fun podcasts.
So many amazing podcasts. Amazing podcasts. When I say amazing, I mean amazing podcasts. Now it's the industry is growing, of course, and it keeps on growing. But it's so rewarding to be in here. So indeed, when you ask me, well, I will reply, what's so special about me doing this? I'm able to do work that I like. Come on. So yeah, I will always be here.
Yeah, and I think you wouldn't be in CRO space for like 20 years at this point if you didn't absolutely love what you were doing in it.
Yeah, I think it's over 25 years even. I'm getting really,
all right, so I undersold really 20
years now. Yeah.
Love it. Cool. So the topic for today is something I'm sure people have been in conversations with others where, hey, we want to do experimentation, but someone will say something and like, I don't want to test. I don't want to run I don't want to do CRO. I don't want to do that for reasons. And I think there's a bifurcation. I keep on saying bifurcation. I don't know if I'm using that rightly. Let's just say a split. I'm trying to sound smart, but I'm not smart. There's a split between legitimate reasons, or I guess logical reasons to not want to A/B test, and then illogical reasons. So what I want to focus on is logical reasons. But before we do, let's kind of push off the illogical reasons. That would be things like, I don't like testing. I don't like math. You're a stupid doo-doo head, and I don't like your math nerd reasons. Those are just illogical reasons that people would be like, I just don't like you. I don't like the process. I don't like being proven wrong. Those are generally illogical reasons, and that's a different conversation that we'll have at a later point. But the focus is, what are logical reasons that people can say that's a good reason to be against A/B testing? But then how do CROs actually address those conversations? That while it's logical, how do we talk them off the ledge or convince them to be on our side? I'm going to kick it off with the first one that I've heard so many times, and I hate this. I hate this as a thing. People have come to me and they're like, we don't want to A/B test because it may not win. How do you address that? What's the first thought that comes in your head, Ton, when you hear that?
That it's a common thing. I'm getting this a lot. Afraid to lose is one thing, of course, but it probably will not win. Every logical reason has a good side and a bad side. I think if you are low on the number of users on your websites, you probably will run into inconclusive all the time, really hard to find a winner, then this is even a logical reason not to test. If you have a lot of users and you would be able to test this, then this is an illogical reason for me to share. I'm afraid being proven wrong?
Maybe. Maybe it's adjacent to that. Sometimes I think we have to solve this problem by offering the alternatives. If someone says, I don't want to test because it may not win, what's the alternative? You do a thing and you have no data to prove whether the thing's working or not, other than number go up, number go down, but there's a lot of confounds that maybe it went down even though it actually would have won, but there's other reasons that are confounding it.
I think that this specific message, it might not. It should not be a loser. I have to implement this anyway. I think in the days of the cookie laws, when people really had to implement something, like I cannot test this because I have to implement this. It's the same with the accessibility guidelines coming up in June. It's also like, okay, we have to do this, and then I cannot test this because it has to be implemented.
Okay, can I push on that? I love this thread, and this is something I've been pushing with Aaron on a little bit, because I see both sides, and I think there's a lot of nuance that we have to explore, but like we just have to do it. It's a system update, it's an accessibility checkpoint. When you're an e-commerce site and you have a bug, like testing bug fixes was another one that kind of rolls up into this. Like testing bug fixes versus just implementing them. On one hand, it's like we just have to do it. The site has to be accessible. But on the flip side, Aaron's pushed back quite a bit. Like if you test the accessibility fix, you might have a bug in your implementation. It might cause issues. So I see both sides of a need to do something as a checkbox. It has to be done. Accessibility has to be done. But there is a little bit of a science in how you implement accessibility, that it has to be accessible, but it also has to not break the site entirely for everyone
To me,
else.
it's a sign of a lack of experimentation, culture, maturity. Because if you only think about embedding and implementing accessibility the week before the law demands you to, then you're too late in the process. If you are an experimenter working in a experimentation company, then you would have thought a year up front, okay, let's build a process on testing all these new guidelines and space and font types to come up with the best solution that we need to implement in a year from now. And take that experimentation approach and make sure if we have to implement all these guidelines that we're not losing a lot of money because we know how it should be implemented. So it's a lack of maturity. And then, of course, it should not be like you fighting against the one bringing that message. Oh, I have to implement this next week by law. Well, what can I do so next time we face something like this, that I can help you already a couple of months up front to come up with the best solution? What should we change in the process? How can I help you, instead of being the angry person saying you did this wrong?
Yeah, I know we talked a lot about that with Shrek, i.e. Michael Ogard, which I definitely butchered his name again. Sometimes you're the problematic CRO and you're just lecturing people on how to do things rather than working collaboratively with them. You mentioned something around lack of maturity is probably the reason why people push back on, with potentially logical, potentially illogical reasons, on experimentation. I think that's the crux of this whole conversation, that if people are pushing back on experimentation in anything, logical or illogical, there's probably a lack of maturity in understanding the value of experimentation. So the solution in many of these cases is explaining how and where experimentation can fit into the process. But I think more tactically, people might agree that experimentation works and is good as a concept, but practically actually doing the things, they might have pushback on every little thing. And I think that's where, like, okay, it may not win. It's like, well, we want to test, but it might not win, so let's not do it. That's more on the illogical side.
Yeah, I think the maturity is not only on the culture part, but also on the technical part. Because often I will hear the message of, we don't have the development resources, we don't have the time, it takes too much time, too much effort to run the experiment. Oh, this payment solution is being offered by all our competitors. We just need to implement this now. We cannot wait for 6 months before this test is conducted and we have the development resources and so on. And also, by the way, my developers think that building A/B test is really boring. It's a small task. It's rubbish. They want to work on a big project, not on an A/B experiment. So it's even if you have the resources, you still need to find someone who's willing to build this. So these are lacking a technical maturity, because if you have a proper setup, it's just a matter of pushing the code live and it will be validated automatically. It's like a no-brainer. It's like costing no time. But for most companies, this is not the case. It's actually costing them a lot of time.
I want to go into that. So I think that was like my fourth bullet of like legitimate pushbacks to A/B testing. We talk a lot about like, oh, if you're redesigning the site, test it before you launch it. I think as a concept, that's really good. We should always aim to try and do that. If someone were to walk up to me and be like, hey, you should go to the gym 7 days a week because that's really good for your health, and you should diet and you should exercise and you should take care of your mental health and all that stuff. It's really great ideas and thoughts and feedback. But in practicality, if I have 3 kids and I'm going through some personal shit, going to the gym might be the hardest thing for me to do. In that same way, I think that people say you should test redesigns. I am very much, as a concept, that's great. But I was part of a couple different companies at different times through my career where they were redesigning. And I was a person saying we should test it. And they're like, I agree, we should test it. But as we went through the logistics, especially on the SEO side, on the technical side of maintaining 2 versions of the site and testing it, the tech stack was not in place to support a full redesign testing. I think you're exactly right. There are many companies that don't have that opportunity, that they love the idea of doing it, but logistically they find it hard. And if it's someone like, hey, we have to test this redesign, it's a good idea. But when you dig into the nuts and bolts, it's like, how the fuck are we going to do this? This is so hard. And our stack isn't good enough. And it's like, well, all right, I'm going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to upgrade our stack to just do this redesign or upgrade everything. We don't have the budget for that now. So I think that's one of the most legitimate pushbacks to A/B testing, at least for those tests that I see people. How would you address that?
Well, testing redesigns is a tough thing because it's indeed really hard to do, and it makes more sense to slowly test all iterations, and in the end you will come up to some sort of new framework, new design. But if you already passed that point and just created a new redesign, it would be lovely if you're able to release it to 10% of the users, but then most companies cannot. So they just have to pull the switch, like, okay, we're going from the old state to the new state from now on. And of course, you just need to monitor and track your data to see if you're not losing a lot of money. And if you are, you should be able to roll back. It's just a matter of taking more risk. If you're not able to run the experiment or it's costing too many resources, you just make a decision, but then it's based on data before and after the switch, which is influenced by external factors, so it's less trustworthy, but it's probably better than doing a real proper experiment that's going to cost you 6 months and a couple of $100,000. It's more risk, and sadly, you already took the wrong path a year ago when you started working on the redesign, but well, let's do it different next time.
I think in that perfect world, you have that culture set up that they've enabled themselves that at any point when they want to redesign test or do expensive testing and cool stuff, they can do it. But I think the reality, I think a lot of junior CROs or single CRO teams, I'm sure even clients that you work with, they're coming to you because they don't know what they're doing. They're trying to figure out, they see the value and they're trying to learn, they're trying to grow, but they're not set up to do it right now. You could take this cold approach and be like, I told you so, and you should have done it, and I'm fucking like, I told you everything, and that's not helpful.
Yeah, I think there are several levels in this, because indeed you have companies where the whole company is telling you, we are not testing, we don't believe in testing, we have whatever design-driven approach, gut feel, this is how we roll. And of course, if you're a small company, it kind of makes sense. If you're a startup, you don't have the data. Of course, you can do some research experiments, but not a lot of proper validation. So you take the risk, you be an entrepreneur, and you fail or you hit it and you go all the way to the moon. But a lot of these companies don't believe in testing. But if you are past a specific point when everyone does not believe in testing because they don't trust data or whatever, you come to the next phase where some people believe in testing, but others don't. Like, this should not be tested because this is a campaign or the competition is doing this or because this report of Gartner is telling me that I should implement this on my website. And once you pass that point, once you debunk that, then you are in a phase where they want to test, but they don't have the resources or the technical setup to be able to run the experiment. So we want to test this, but we cannot test this because of some reason. And then you're already becoming in the more mature place, right? Now let's build a tech stack so we don't have these issues anymore, so we can run the tests. And then in the end, you have this level of, okay, we rather not test this because it has to be live anyhow, and that discussion we had before. But so if you are facing something in your company, if it's everyone saying we don't believe in testing, that's going to take a while before you'll have debunked that. But maybe you have to realize yourself that you're not in a position where they can even run proper experiments, and just have to take the risk and wait until the moment when there are more clients, more mature, it becomes a cash cow, they want to invest in experimentation, and then you start pushing the experimentation button. Depending on the phase, I think, where your company is in, and if you only face some people that push back like we should not test this, because I'm running this Valentine's campaign. It's Valentine's Day in a week from now. If we are running the A/B experiment, it's only finished after the campaign is done. Why should we test anyway? And actually, you're totally right. Maybe run a bandit if you have the technical solution during the Valentine's campaign. But okay, let's discuss next time if it's a Christmas campaign, Black Friday, whatever, Thanksgiving campaign. How can we prepare stuff the right way or the better way so we can make more money in the next campaign? So start working with them, and then you come to the level, we all want to run tests, but we don't have the technical setup or the technical resources to do so. Now let's work on that. Let's brief upper management that everybody wants to test, but we don't have the proper setup to be able to run tests. I think that's the levels that are at play. So as a CRO, don't get mad if you're getting pushback that someone does not want to test or believe in testing, or because maybe looking at the maturity of the company, they're fully right that it's not the best thing to test at that specific time because of a specific reason. So make sure you're able to stand in the shoes of that specific person giving you that message.
I want to keep on going down the path of other legitimate pushback to A/B testing the individual reasons. But there's another layer of this that's like, do you have one person pushing back? Do you have 5 people pushing back? Do you have the whole company pushing back? When you see something like that, where it's one person pushing back saying it might not win. Okay, well, you can address that a different way. When it's 10 people saying it might not win, that's a different conversation on how to address that. And if it's the whole company saying, it might not win, then you have to address that.
I'm still intrigued by it might not win. It's probably going to be inconclusive anyhow, but it might not win. This is the fear that you've created something with your team, product team, or yourself that you want to implement on the website. You want to be proud and be able to tell your family, this is something I created. And if you test it first, it could be that it's negative or inconclusive, not being implemented. So there's no pride of your work because no one will be able to see this unless you explain them how to end up in the B variation and ask them to buy more in the B variation so your variation will win. But that's a side story. If that's the fear, I think switching and returning the question by saying, okay, but if we test this, we at least understand if we're going to lose the company a lot of money. So we're not testing specifically to look for winners. We're testing for validation to make sure we're not losing any money.
Okay, let's role play this. I'll be the shitty person saying, I don't want to test it. And I'm going to have you react to me being the shitty person. Whatever, I'm a shitty person anyway, but I'm going to be the shitty person telling you how to do that, okay? So in this case, Tan, you come to me and you're like, hey, dude, we want to run a test on this new feature that you're rolling out. And I say, Tan, look, I know you're the Don. I know you're really smart at everything, but I don't want to run this test. I just don't want to run it. I know it's going to win. And like, are you not smart enough? Don't you know CRO and psychology principles? You know it'll win too. Why are we running this test? I know it's going to win. Why are we wasting our time with this? I have so much other shit I got to do.
This is fun. You playing the role of the person that's pushing back on, I don't want to test this. It's like, it feels so unnatural. No, but I probably, if this is exactly the wording you're using, I probably say, this is your product, your specific area of the website. Oh, good. If you don't want to test, don't test. It depends on the state of the company. If I have other product owners that want to test, I'll probably devote my energy over there. Because you were telling me that I want to run a test on something that you created. And I think that's the wrong way. It should be you that wants to run a test on a specific feature that you want to implement, or you don't want to do this, and that's your decision.
So that's really interesting. Hold on, I want to push on that. I see both sides of this. I'm going to say words, but I'm not necessarily going to believe them. I'm just going to explore them with you right now. I think kind of what you're saying is don't run a test unless the product owner comes to you and says, hey, I want to run this test.
Yes.
On the flip side, though, what if they don't know that there's a test to be run? What if they don't, what if the CRO comes in and is like, hey, I know you're rolling out this new feature. I can make it so easy. I know it's going to win because of this research, and it won't delay you at all because I already have the test built out. It's a feature flag. It'll take me 5 seconds, and it'll quantify it. If you don't have that conversation, maybe that product owner doesn't have that ability or the knowledge, and that's an education moment, and that's a collaboration moment, you know? Like if you're only waiting for that product owner to come to you and tell you, I want to run a test, I think this is very dependent on the company you work with, to be fair. But I see the opposite side of that.
The biggest reason that product owners are not running an experiment is because it's taking too much time, too many resources. They're sprinting. They only have a couple of points they can adjust the stuff, and it's building and shipping and not running the experiment because the technical maturity is wrong set up in that company. Because they should set up something in the engineering pipeline. If some code is being shipped, it will be validated anyway because it's going to be tested for performance, for bugs, for security. It should also be tested for user experience or transactions or whatsoever. And then it doesn't cost the product team any extra time at all. Instead of shipping, it's being shipped as a validation supported by IT, engineering, dev, whatever. That's the ideal scenario. Sadly, most companies are not in that sacred, holy paradise scenario location yet. So it's costing time, and the product owners, they're more seeing experimentation as a research methodology. I can learn from it, which is good. It's a first step. I can learn from it, and based on the learnings, we will build something new and we will ship it without testing, because we have already built this. We already spent 400 development hours. This is going to be shipped anyhow. And to me, that's fine. It's a phase of maturity. They already did some research on experimentation. They probably use some UX principles, like you were saying. All good. But then you have to work as fast as possible with engineering on building something that will be validated anyhow. Non-inferiority, I don't care. Significant results. So it can be rolled back if it's costing the company a lot of money. And so I think that's the first thing you should build. Don't waste your time on trying to convince those product owners they should test something they ship. Just make sure it's in place.
Yeah, so this is what I talked to Ryan at Eppo about this. Like, make experimentation so cheap that running, like cheap in terms of resourcing and actual cost and speed as a process of all of that. Like, that will make it so more people will adopt it. I think that's the right process. And I think what you're also saying in terms of advice for junior CROs, if a product owner is like in the middle of rolling out a feature and they built it and they're not going to test it, the time to argue about rolling out this feature without testing it isn't at that point where they're basically going to ship it, and you complaining about it isn't going to change their minds. That's the wrong time to talk about it. But I think it's a red flag. It's a red flag if when you keep on seeing that product owner, they keep on shipping things without testing it. And the problem isn't like complain to the product owner. You could privately do that in your diary. Like, that's fine. I very support that. Or to your therapist, very support that. But I think the solution is on the CRO to try and figure out ways to insert themselves in the process as cheaply and frictionless as possible. If they keep on shipping things without testing it, use a CRO. Try and make it cheap. Try and make it easy. And try and make it so like, oh, you have a feature release in 4 weeks. I'm going to try and quickly squeeze this in with a process and the tooling that you could validate that while, you have that time to do it.
To me, I think the biggest trouble is that I'm triggered by the fact that the CRO should do this, they should do that and whatever. I'm of the school that CRO, the job title CRO, doesn't exist. It's that we are enablers, helping product teams, marketing teams, servant teams to make good decisions based on data. Running experiments to validate is number one. Running A/B tests for research reasons, also do qualitative research, and so on, to optimize your prioritization, and everything you ship is being tested. I'm from that school. So CRO should not run the experiments. The product people, marketing people should run on experiments because they're responsible for marketing and products.
I think you're right. But when we're having this conversation, there's a self-serving group of people in this, right?
Yes, and sadly, that's only 5% of the companies. The other 95% of the companies, from the ones
are having this issue with legitimate, quote unquote, pushback to A/B testing, where the CRO has to do it. And it shouldn't be the CRO's job. I know Manuel da Costa talks a lot about this, where he's like, it should be on like a VP level or some super senior person pushing that down on the product owners to tell them, you should be testing this shit. Why aren't you testing this shit?
I think it's all about being supportive. If you are in a company in that specific setup that you are the CRO that needs to run the experiments, then in the beginning of the new year or quarter, approach those product owners and marketing people, ask them, what are your goals? What do you need to achieve? What's important for you? How can I help you to be successful in this? What kind of experiments can we run? When do you have time? When do you have developers available so we can set up those experiments so I can support you to become better? Some product people or marketing people are like, no, I don't have time for testing at all. Go away. You're annoying me. And I think that's only really bad if it's a small company where there's like one product owner and one marketing manager, and you're the only CRO person, and they're both pushing back like, we don't have time for this. Then it's strange that there was this function created of CRO at all. So someone must be supportive, but it takes time. It takes time.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's interesting when CRO roles get created. Some of it might be that CRO roles get created with a conceived notion that either they're going to be boxed into like testing all the button colors, or being boxed into just applying best practices blindly. Like they're the keeper of knowing how everything works all the time.
Yeah, but that's terrible. It's terrible because then probably this role was created because the company is losing money.
Oh, I'm not saying it's a good thing. It's a terrible thing. Objectively, it's fucking terrible.
Advertising costs are going through the roof. The pay per new client is too high. So we need someone that's going to optimize this. We need a CRO.
I mean, so like you've been part. I'm sure you've had conversations like this at your agency where someone will come to you and be like, "Tell me all the best practices on how to make my site, make my conversions go up." Right? I'm sure you've had sales calls like that when you're like, no, that's not what we do. But that is a very pervasive thing in our industry, unfortunately, that we have to talk them out of that logic.
Yeah, and the fun thing is the companies that have those kind of questions, you probably can hand them a UX principles guide and just tell them implement this on your website, because they probably are not obeying any UX principle and they have a lot of low-hanging fruit. And by embedding that specific lecture of UX principles probably will make them a lot of money because they're in a different state, a different phase of maturity. So sadly, it even helps. So the question is even legit. Like, I want to have more conversions. Give me a list to do this. And it probably will work also.
Yeah, you might be right. And I think that's why a lot of like the comment checklist for CRO checklist of shit to do gets so much reach. Because I think there's actually a pretty big bucket of people who don't know what they're doing. And that's okay. Like I said this in a couple episodes ago, like, I don't know how to skateboard. That doesn't mean I'm a terrible person. You could just have gaps in knowledge. That's fine. You said something a little bit before, and I really want to push on this. I think something that I realized as we were talking through everything in this episode so far is CROs have to legitimize the pushback. If someone says it might not win, it's too slow, it's hard to do, like the math is complicated, we don't have enough resources. If you're a CRO being like, no, fuck you, it's easy, I just do this, that's not helpful. That's not a productive conversation. Versus if you legitimize their pushback, it might be a conversation where you come together to be like, I know it's too slow right now, but right now is the qualifier. It is too slow right now, but I want to make it faster, and let's work together on making it faster. Is there something to like, when people are pushing back on testing, be open to the fact that they have legitimate concerns?
Yeah, I think that that's the right track, because if you really have a proper conversation with that product owner or marketing owner whatsoever in a pub and ask the question, do you want to know how much value you're bringing the company? What's working, what's not working? Do you want to know this? And then the answer will always be yes. No one is saying no. Of course you want to know. But then it's not working in the current process or the speed or the demand or the resources or whatsoever. Together you can build this. Okay, let's create a small paper for as some budget for next year, so we can build a system that you are able to use in your current process and that's not delaying you too much, so you can have some of those decisions. Work together. You're in the same company. Come on, it's like it's always. Well, why is it always like two opposite groups? We're supporting the same team.
I talked about this with Moshe and Matt on a previous episode. Like, CROs are kind of product owners or product managers in disguise. And there could be something to the fact that when CROs come to the table as product managers and then they talk to quote unquote actual product managers, there's a, wait, who owns what? And how do we define these roles? Because I think in your case, If CRO is there to support the product manager in their decision making and everything that they do, there's a very clear like product owner owns the end decision making, but CRO keeps on consulting, so to speak. Hey, you should run a test. Hey, you should conduct research. Oh, so I'll help you do that thing in almost like an internal agency kind of way, right? That's a very productive conversation if that happens. But at some companies, people are hired with the expectation that CRO is going to own all of the testing. But that testing still has to flow through that product owner, and they might not approve it. And then there's like a butting of heads where it should be a kumbaya, it's not.
But this is exactly why already, I think the presentation I created about CRO jobs are going to die is from, I think, 2018 or something.
Wait, were you the CRO's dead person?
Yeah, that's how it was pivoted.
I forgot about that.
My presentation was CRO are going to die, like they don't exist anymore. It doesn't make sense to me why there is a separate CRO person. They're in the way of everyone. The product people should be optimizers, marketing people should be optimizers. Of course, you need some help running this stuff and getting some teaching and so on. So there could be an optimizer or experimenter or whatsoever.
You know what's interesting? There's kind of a role, if you squint your eyes and you say CRO is to QA as product manager is to developer, there's kind of a role of like, we're the filter to pass to make sure everything works and is good. And if it doesn't, kick it back or check, right? There's some symbiosis. There's some analogy, that's the word. There's an analogy there that can be had, right?
No, I think you're onto something. In all the mature organizations, there is no specific conversion optimization role. There is an experimentation team, where they're owning the product experimentation because they mostly home build their own platform. And then they help people to run those experiments, but not running those experiments themselves. And of course, this is the ideal scenario for all companies. And a lot of companies will not be large enough and don't have the number of users to have this specific setup. So there will still be someone responsible for not conversion rates in the end. It's always someone responsible for sales or for the number of calls to the call center to decline that or something. So with that responsibility, I think that's also the position where the optimization responsibility should be. The one responsible for the targets should also decide on experimentation and optimization and how it's applied in their specific little silo. And then, of course, you have people supporting you. And in a small company, it can be a one-person army that's doing dev, design, persuasion, copywriting, everything. But I think it's strange to have the CRO person responsible for specific targets, unless they're really taking away from the product people and the marketing people, but then the CRO person just becomes the new marketing manager or the new product owner.
Yeah, I think this conversation's evolved a little bit into like the ideal location of where CRO should sit and how they contribute. And I think that's all. It's all so correct. I kind of agree. As a role, it shouldn't exist. I've been making some spicy takes that kind of hinges on what you said. Like CRO should just become product managers, and or like product managers should have CRO as a mindset, or both. That's where you will ultimately be able to affect the change. But going back to like the pushback, if you are in a company where you are the CRO, nothing's ever going to be perfect. You're hired in a role. You have to coordinate, collaborate with the product manager. We're talking about legitimate pushback to A/B testing.
I don't trust the results because we've implemented a couple of these winners, these significant positive outcomes, and we're not seeing any uplift or whatsoever on the bottom line after we implemented 4 or 5 winning experiments. And they're probably right. That's the sad side of the story. I always try to not report on the percentage of uplift. It's a bandwidth, like it's between so many percent on a specific significance level. So it's a difficult statistical story. I'm reporting on science. This has a positive effect on user experience. This is why we should implement this, or on the business case or whatsoever. So I'm not reporting on the expected uplift, because if you really do the calculation of the business value, you have to consider so many things that should be taken out on the big pile of money you're promising, which is a pitfall. So don't promise too much money. Don't go that money route is an important thing, because then expectations will inflate and then they're unhappy if they see the final result. It's always the opposite. Like, at least we made sure we did not implement stuff that was going to hurt the business a lot.
Okay, I want to role play again. There is something in what you're saying that I think there's actually another legitimate concern that product managers might have. If I'm the product manager, the Don comes to me with a test idea, and they're like, let's get this in the queue, let's run this test, here's the research, here's the data, blah, blah, blah. And I say, okay, well, what's the projected uplift? Because I wouldn't run a test if we don't know it's going to win. We need to do things that will drive the business further. So what's the projected uplift? And I push back on them. I'm like, the point of a test is we don't know what's going to happen. If I know it's going to win, I'm just going to do the work. I'm not going to run a test. But I think that's I don't want to say a legitimate, I guess it's kind of logical that like product owners shouldn't be doing things unless they know it's going to work.
I will tell you as a product owner, if I'm the conversion specialist, I don't have to be Tom the Don or whatsoever. I'm just a conversion specialist. I will tell you, dear Mr. Shiva, we run two types of experiments. We run tests to learn and we run tests to win. My suggestion is something that we can run to learn so we can become better in prioritization and pushing the things forward that have a higher chance of being successful if you're testing this or not. So we are running some experiments to learn, and please give me 10%, 15% of your development time from the team so we can run some experiments to learn, and then we can reprioritize and hopefully still then run tests instead of just shipping. Test to win, because in the end, it's in the end about winning. But it's like you have product teams that are really into research. So they do a lot of user research and they do a lot of experiments also for research reasons to learn, but they're hardly shipping anything. There's almost like 100% research. Nothing is being shipped as an experiment at all. Or you have teams that just ship, hopefully as an experiment, but don't do any research at all. The truth is somewhere in the middle. Some teams just need a little bit more research because of specific reasons of the specific user journey. Some teams need less research, but they have to become better winners. And to win, you need to research.
So I think what you're effectively saying is you go to the shitty product owner, me, and you say, look, I understand your concern. We don't have a projected uplift because it's a test. So it could be, I told the product guys, it's like, my projected uplift is plus 100% to minus 100%. There's the good band of like, it'll probably do something in the middle of that. But I think the reality is, come to them saying, we mobilize resources, engineering resources, design resources, for qualitative research to build a test version, a sandbox of something, and then go do user research. It looks like a test, and it quacks like a test, and it looks like whatever. It looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, therefore it's a duck. It looks like a test. That's fair, but we're going to reskin this because whether it wins or loses, we are going to extract insights from this test. It might win, and that'd be awesome, but consider this a calculated investment into research rather than a test. And I think that's the easiest way to convince someone if they're asking for a projected uplift to instead stop thinking about it as a test, think of it as research.
And it also invites you to be bolder. Like, well, why do you want to change one word, one different shading color on a button or whatsoever? If you want to learn, you want to just leave out the full element, completely rearrange it, be way bolder in your experiments so you can learn, because the thing you want to have is a significant result. Positive or negative, I don't care. If I leave, I think this USP part of the product page is just not that good. Let's try to leave it out completely. If it has no impact, that it didn't add any value, so maybe the USPs were wrong. Maybe conversions are going up. Maybe they're going down massively, which you will notice in a couple of hours already if you have the data and you just switch off the test because you already had your learning, because it's not about significant winners, it's about learning. So be bolder. That's also something that product owners like take faster, bigger steps to learn stuff so we can become better in prioritization and have more wins in the long run.
And I think the alternative is even if all of those things, you may still come into, maybe it's a combination of it's a hard thing to do logistically, and we don't know if it'll win, and it's too slow, right? Like maybe it's a combination of all three of these things that are quote unquote legitimate. Then maybe as the CRO, you offer the alternative and be like, look, all right, well, let's run a qualitative test. A test doesn't have to be a literal A/B test. Let's get some research. Let's validate this through some means. You mentioned pretty early on, effectively that hierarchy of evidence, where you can do a pre and post. That's pretty low in the hierarchy of evidence compared to like a meta-analysis at the top. When we make decisions, it's not always going to be the best, highest quality version, and that's okay. Lower it and try your best to get the highest ring of the hierarchy of evidence. CROs should be the push of try and do that. Honestly, it should be on the product owners, whoever stakeholder might be pushing back, to actively seek higher quality evidence.
Yep. And it can still be a legitimate reason, because I always bump into companies telling me, we have run now 45 A/B tests in the past, whatever weeks or months, but we were not able to find a single winner or even a single effect, positive or negative. Everything we do is inconclusive. And of course, it could be a bad reason because they're testing so many small things on the traffic size they're having, on the number of users they're having, that you will never find a specific uplift. It's kind of strange because at some point they need to find a false positive, or they're just still a small company with not enough users to run those kind of experiments. And then you just tell it's totally fine. You will never find something that's that's a true positive because you don't have the data. You need to take more risks, take different approaches, go all in, and once you have the number of users, then you can run this experiment. You are too early. It can be legit that this is the issue, and they're fully right because they thought everyone is selling us CRO. It's the new gold, and they've learned it's not for them yet.
There might be legitimate reasons of pushback for A/B testing. Legitimate meaning logical, like they have something to it. It could be slow. It might not win. It's hard to do. Like logistically, it's also hard to understand technically. Like, what does stat sig mean? I don't understand the maths. I don't get it. Therefore, I don't want to touch it. Those are legitimate reasons. Let me know if you agree with this. Step one is legitimize the pushback. Like if they have a fear, let's talk to them and let's legitimize that pushback and let's hear what they have to say because it might be based in something. As we work towards hearing them out, hearing their problems, work towards solutions, not in that current moment. It might not be easy to solve for there are redesigns already in place and we're never going to be able to test it because the ships are already moved. And instead of complaining, use your energy to figure out the logistics of maybe the next redesign or even bigger tests in the future. There's something with the stack that you have, the technology that's not allowing you to do it. Go do that now. Focus your energy on that rather than complaining about something that's probably not going to move. They're not going to change. It's hard to turn a big ship around. I don't know, whatever that analogy is. It's hard to turn. I don't know. I forget the analogy. But anything else?
Yeah, and I think step 3 is once there are several people that are willing to test and some are not and giving you pushback, the ones that are willing to test will also bump into a research issue or development. This is not, we want to test, but we cannot because of some legitimate reason. But then at least you have something to work on and then together try to make the solution. Don't tell them, but you should test. If they can't, then you need to help them to run those tests they want to run. I think that's the first step. But then you're already in a good place because then the energy is positive. They want to experiment, but they're stuck somewhere because of some probably tech reason or whatsoever that you can solve.
I love that. That's great. Anything else you want to add, Ton?
Yeah, be positive. Like life is too short to waste negative energy in your work. Come on, most people are probably working 40 hours a week. Experimentation is fun. It brings energy. It brings positive energy. It's so rewarding to solve puzzles, solve murder mysteries of conversions on a website.
Wait. Murder mysteries? What are you talking about?
That's the business window. What we're doing, we're researching, trying to find the answer why people are not converting on the website. It's the same like solving a murder mystery, solving a puzzle.
Oh, okay. I was like, wait, I didn't understand the connection at first. I was like, what does CRL have to do with murder mystery?
No, but
solving problems and being a detective. I get
detective.
That makes
it's
sense.
A lack of information. You're gathering information, and then you will see the result and get to the collecting evidence. And it's a positive thing. So if you're getting pushback and negative energy, I've learned over all those years when I was young or unexperienced, because I'm still young, of course, I've tried to convince people that were negative to change. And I spent a lot of time and energy to try to convince them and make them believers like I was believing in experimentation or A/B testing. Never worked really well. So, or I'm really bad at trying to convince people to believe in this, or it's just really hard for people that have this specific conservative look, from my perspective, on experimentation to change them. So don't waste your time and energy on that. Work with the ones that are happy about this and positive. Like life is too short to spend time on negative energy.
Yeah, I think you catch more bees with honey, right? At the end of the day, you're going to get much more buy-in if you're trying to actively help, work with people. Just like with the episode with Shrek, i.e. Michael Ogard, when you talk at people rather than work with people, people will want to talk to you more. If you're just lecturing them about all the shit they're not doing right, they're going to be like, all right, well, fuck you. I don't want to talk to you. All you do is yell at me for things I'm not doing.
Mike was fully right. Do your research. It's so strange that we have a whole process to optimize a website for more transactions or user experience. You should also have a process to optimize your optimization process in the company.
Okay, so I love that, but I talked to Moshe and Matt about the same thing. Sometimes we have to optimize the way we talk to stakeholders, but is that not borderline sociopathic?
Well, at least you need to hire someone else to do research.
Who's a sociopath?
About because analyze yourself is going to be hard, but be aware about this, that you're also in this. It's something a lot of people are not able to see.
For sure. Awesome. Well, Tan, this was a great episode, jam-packed. I think we will skip shit you need to know this week because there was way too much to cover in this particular topic. But I'm so glad, Tan the Don, that you joined us on this episode. What's some of the cool things you're working on?
Well, of course, I sold my agency last year, so I'm an independent free man again. So I'm doing some contracting, but only 20% of my time, which I like. So I always like to help companies that have experimentation challenges. They don't have to be like 100% mature. I also like the ones that are in the beginning, but I need to like the product or the service or the people. There should be a match. So that's what I'm doing, and all the other time is devoted into the community. I love this experimentation community. So I'm running events like Conversion Hotel, Experimentation Island. I'm doing the Experimentation Culture Awards just to grow this industry and make it more professional, and that more people can learn from other people. That's what's driving me. And I'm so happy that those pandemic days are over. So hopefully there won't be a new one at some point. Live events are so amazing. So I'm hoping to attend them a lot, speak at them, and also just host them as an organizer myself.
I love it. Well, hopefully I can make my way across the pond to see you guys over in the European side of things. But Tan, this was awesome. I think also, look at how much positivity Tan had this whole episode, right? We could have spent this whole episode complaining about how shitty people are, and we didn't. We were super positive this whole episode. So Tan the Don, thank you so much for joining us on this latest episode of From A to B. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.